given this presentation before?
Nope, this is my first time.
First time.
First time I've given a presentation.
Good afternoon.
You'll do just great.
Hi, I want to welcome all of you to the guided tour of coal mines. You might remember COVID, right? We had planned, this was going to be in 2020. We had planned 5 before that. We did the guided tours. Many of you remember, raise your hand if you were on any of them, the barns and the churches and all that stuff. It was great fun. And then we had this in the planning, and then COVID hit. And we had to shut, like everybody else, we had to shut things down. So it's a real pleasure to have you here and to get started again on what we believe is a real service to the community. We have tried really hard in the 20 years that I've been here helping, Sealand's been here longer, to establish a museum that is worth coming to from far distances. We have a variety of types of displays on purpose. We also have a significant archives room that is growing and growing, so we're hoping that you will someday make use of that or come by and see it. We have a variety of ways we keep printed material and or documents that are acid-free that should last far beyond you or me. And so that's good too. So we're excited to have this particular program, particularly because it's Labor Day. We know that hundreds, perhaps even thousands of people, and yes, gals, they were mostly men, worked in the coal mines in Adams County and around Adams County, in Lodgepole and up at Scranton, and of course we know of the coal mines in the middle of North Dakota. But in your brochure that you have in your hands, we hope you're a little surprised at some of those pictures, one being the one on the top left that shows you the coal deposits in North Dakota and South Dakota. So there's a lot here, and a lot of people had veins of coal on their farms, but they did not necessarily turn them into mines. So today we have a display, thanks to Mike Howe, Hettinger's own Mike Howe, and that's other people also, of some of the area mines. But you can see there are so many. We had to narrow it down to 3. Our first speaker is Mike Howe. He's originally from Hettinger. His title is in the brochure, but he's the #2 person in the North Dakota Public Service Commission. He deals with, he's the environmental land engineer and is in charge of abandoned mine lands. And in your brochure also, you probably saw a picture of a little Angus calf in a hole. That's some of the things that he deals with. He gets calls from people who say, such and such, the road fell through, what happened? And he and his people come out and have to fill that up. So what we're hoping will happen today is that you will learn some new things that perhaps you did not know. You'll hear some things that you did know, and we hope that by doing this, we have saved all this information for 20 to 40 years down the road when you and I are no longer here. Someone else will come and pick it up and say, look, this is what they knew in such and such a day. So again, welcome. And it is my very great pleasure to introduce to you Mike Howe from Hettinger. Give him a good round of applause, please.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank Miss Bonnie for the promotion. I'm just an engineer. I'm a lowly engineer. I'm not anywhere as close to control of the Abandoned Mine Land Division. I'm Mike Howe. I work for the Abandoned Mine Land Division in Bismarck, North Dakota. What we deal with is the hazards associated with abandoned coal mines. On the screen, you'll see a picture. That's the Hettinger Fire Department. It's over by Haynes, actually. What happened was a prairie fire went through, ignited a bunch of coal fines, and they tried to put it out, but with coal, it's very difficult to put out. So they tried a couple of times, then they called us, and this is what we do. So we brought a contractor out and took care of this fire. Our organization was created by Jimmy Carter on August 3rd when he signed the Surface Coal Mine and Reclamation Act. What this did was it set up standards for not only mining coal, but it also included a fee on current mined coal that is used to fund this program. Right now, I believe it's a little over 6% a ton is what the coal mines have to pay to when they mine the coal, and we draw into this pot. Our allocation is approximately $3 million every year. Right now, our program was approved in 1981. Since that time, we've spent a little over $62 million reclaiming abandoned coal mines in North Dakota. Of that $62 million, Adams County has had a little over $1.3 million spent to reclaim the abandoned coal mines. Currently, we know of about 71 abandoned mines in the county. Statewide, we've got approximately a little over 700 that we know. But every year, we learn of more. We have more landowners call in. This list is constantly growing. In Adams County, we've had 5 major projects. The first 4 were actually at Haynes, reclaiming the Ely Mine, the State Mine, and the Arrowhead Mine. If you'll look, I've got photos from 1973, which will show what the area was like before we went in to reclaim it. And you'll see what it's like now. We also have had, especially at the Arrowhead, and well, at all 3 of the mines, we've had sinkholes that have developed since we went in there and reclaimed them. So it's a constant process where the voids from the mining keep migrating up. And then we bring in contractors to fill these voids. And it's continuing to this day. My main focus is surface mines. And this is a mine that was up in New Salem, actually. This is the pre-mine over here. That picture was taken from this telephone pole looking this direction, and that telephone pole looking back. That's how you can locate everything. This is what it starts with. We go in there. This was a mine that was right next to a county road, and it had a fairly significant drop-off, so that's where we went in and reclaimed it, and hopefully everybody ended up happy. One of the things we also do is reclaim sinkholes where the mining activity migrates up. This sinkhole developed underneath an asphalt road that showed up actually this spring. If you're wondering what the town is behind the track hoe, that's Scranton. Wayne Wilson's the guy in the track hoe, and Shane Biggs it's his tennis shoes you're looking at behind the hole. The hole was, basically it showed up as a lower depression in the highway. Wayne Wilson drove over it and knew it was something different. So Wayne called Shane and us, and we went down there, cored it, and it was about 10 foot deep. And it started about 6 foot and just bellowed out. So we immediately closed the road and got people there. Actually, it's about a half mile south of Scranton. We haven't had, Shane hasn't been able to line up asphalt contractors. So what's there now is a ground asphalt that they've compacted down. And as soon as we can get asphalt contractors, then we'll be over there and complete the repair. This is the distribution of coal mines in Adams County. I believe there's a map over there that shows it in a little better detail. These are the coal mines that were around Haynes that we know of. Part of what I do is a lot of history, looking for old articles, that type stuff. A lot of it is tragic, where the article on the left is actually the left mine, which is a mile southeast of Reeder. And it was in 1913, it was an open pit mine. They were trying to go in and dig more coal out, thinking the bank was stable. The bank failed and it killed 2 of them. The article on the right was a coal vein caught on fire underground in Haynes, and they think it was started by a disgruntled employee, so they went and arrested him. This fire lasted a long time, and I think the state ended up allocating resources to go in and actually put it out. Some of the stuff I come across is kind of fun. This is a picture of Haynes in 1909. Not sure who the young gentleman is with the hat and the suspenders, but he's just not killing it. All of it's interesting. This summer, I worked up at Dickinson at the briquette plant southeast of Dickinson, and we were drilling for exploratory drilling, looking for underground voids. That plant brought in 2 carbonizers, which are what's used to drive off the moisture of the coal so they can process it and make briquettes. Their carbonizers 2 of them were shipped in from Germany, one in 1928, one in 1935. The first diesel from coal that was created in North Dakota was done at this plant when Northern Pacific contracted with them to get 10,000 gallons of number 6 fuel oil, which they cut with regular diesel and burned in their locomotives. The technology that the Germans had in the late 20s and early 30s was superseded probably what we know. And like I said, it was always very interesting. It could not only provide a good briquette for their industry, but also diesel for other things. Anyway, picture on the left is a guy up in Beulah. He opened up his shed door one morning, and his tractor wasn't parked quite the way he parked it before. The picture on the right is actually the state line, or the state land over east of Hettinger. Rodney Lutz rents this. It's right next to the dump, the landfill. And we were out there, and I think this was about 2013. And we had hired a contractor to go out and fill sinkholes. And he found one that we weren't expecting. Everybody was fine. Nobody was hurt. The cab on the track hoe was just destroyed. But do you have any questions? Thank you. Of course. All right. Oh, all right. Oh, what can I help you?
Okay, I was thinking about north of Haynes, there's a ridge of hills that kind of north of where the strip mine was, and there were depressions all over that hill. But they kind of seemed like they disappeared. Would those have been sinkholes? They always warned us not to go there because we might fall into them.
Oh, on the north side of, yeah, those were sinkholes that I think we went and filled like in 2020. I was up there filling sinkholes. So they probably were depressions that we've filled since then. Yes, Denny.
My wife's father was killed at that mine where he had a cat go over this road all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, sunk in and he had a light plant. And then
Yep, yep. Yes?
Are there any plans to reclaim some of the spoil piles, let's say, east of Wilton, by New Leipzig, on the way up to Minot? Huge acreage that's covered with spoil piles. Any possibility that will be reclaimed?
Yes, we are working with our landowners. It's all based on a priority basis and what funds are available. The current program is approved till, I believe it's 2036. But yeah, I've been in contact with a lot of the landowners around Wilton. We have some large activity up by Noonan. And the one west of New Leipzig, that one, we contacted the landowners and they were not interested. This is all, this is done at no expense for the landowners, and it's with their total cooperation. We don't go any place where we're not wanted. So, like I say, and we come up with the designs and we work closely with the landowners. With the one in New Salem, they were worried it was a pasture. They were worried we were going to take too much out of production. So we put in a temporary fence for them so that we could go in and do our reclamation work and they would have access to the rest of the pastures. Plus it allowed them to keep the cattle off of there while it revegetated. In some areas we've gone in and developed springs for ponds for wildlife. We plant trees. We work, the landowner's preference is very important to us because the only reason we're there is because of them and with their approval. There are times when we can't we have to address the hazard where we can't do what they wish done, what they want done, but it's usually there's extenuating circumstances that limit what we can do. Yes?
How exactly do you fill the sinkholes? Do you get like dump trucks full of gravel and dump it into the hole until it's filled?
Actually, what we'll do is we try to find a borrow area, like a knoll on a hill or something that is close by. We'll strip as much topsoil as available, then we'll go in and depending on some of the sinkholes, size of the sinkholes, we'll go to the borrow area, bring that dirt in, put it in the hole, and we try and pack it so it doesn't get a lot of settlement. And then when we get it done, we'll respread the topsoil over the sinkholes and seed it with like a native mix is what we have. In some instances, like up at Dickinson, they're huge. They're about half the size of this room. So it's not feasible to go in and fill it. In that case, what we'll do is we'll strip it back and get what we can of topsoil, haul in what dirt we can find and what we can, and then we'll blend it in so it's kind of a bowl, and then respread topsoil and reseed. You bet. And at any time, if you have a question, just snag me down and get a hold of the commission if you want. They've got my number. Yes?
You mentioned that a contractor or various contractors extinguish some of these fires. How specifically do they do that?
The only way we've found to extinguish coal fires is basically to isolate the burning material. So, like in Velva, what we did was we went to pull it out, but we found a coal vein right underneath. So we put in a layer of clay and put the burning material on top of the clay. And if we can, we'll mix it in with clay and then cap it. At New Leipzig, we did pretty much the same thing where we try to put at least a foot or two of clay down and then just excavate all of the burning material, put it inside that clay lined pit, mixing it with clay as we go along, and then cap it, and then it basically just lets it burn out. Because the one at Velva, it was right next to a pond, So the fire department up there just put one of their pumps in the pond, and for a week, they pumped water on this thing, and as soon as the dried up and the wind started to blow, it would start up again. The coal was just almost impossible to put out.
Is that what they did with the burning coal mine at Amadon?
I don't think we had anything I think we would be in a lot of trouble if we went and put the burning coal mine in Amadon out. I think that's there would be a lot of people upset with us if we did that.
But that had been extinguished at one time, was it not?
Oh, it could have been. I don't,
I think it just burned itself out.
it could have just burned itself out, yeah.
Because it had- I
But
don't know.
that was kind of a tourist area, and
Oh,
yeah, we would be, I would have a lot of people to answer to if I went up there and put that out. Yes. Hang on for a second. I got half deaf. I apologize.
Enjoyable part about your job? Like, what do you enjoy doing the most?
Oh, the most enjoyable part is a lot of the history and talking to the landowners, because the history is fascinating, what they've done. We've got, like up at Dickinson, right next to the place, it's called the Binnock Coal Mine, and what we've got there, I think, is like a drag line or a shovel that was used to dig the Panama Canal, and then they put it on a rail car and shipped it to North Dakota to dig lignite out. And I think it's still up there. I don't know. A lot of it is some of the ingenuity of the miners. There's one up at Garrison. It's called the Custer Mine. And what the miners did was they took 2 drag lines, put one on one end and one on the other, and just drug the bucket in between the two of them. And it was just, these guys figured it out on their own and did it in the 40s. You know, the ingenuity is very impressive on some of these, you know. But
Can you explain what the cause of sinkholes are?
they'll go in and they'll mine out a room or a tunnel or something like that. Usually when they mine out the coal, they'll leave 2 to 3 feet of coal, try to leave at least 2 to 3 feet of coal up there so that, so they can go in there and work. And then as time goes on, that coal will cave away, and then as it just keeps caving up. And eventually it'll make it up to the surface. Or in such instances as like, I'm not going to tell you the mine, but it was one of the mines where the coal was owned by Northern Pacific. And talking to the miners, what they did was, when Northern Pacific got their royalties, they would send a survey crew in to survey the amount of coal that was removed from the mine, and that's what they based their royalty payment, and that's what they charged the miners. Well, what the miners would do is wait till the survey guy left, and then they'd mine the hell out of Northern Pacific's coal, and then they'd pull out all the timbers and that. So the next time the survey guy got there, all the roofs have collapsed, so there was nothing there for him to survey. So there was a lot of, you'll see these maps up here, like this one where we have, all of the underground drawings that were submitted to the state engineer in the 30s and 40s. We put very little faith in any of this stuff because, especially on like sections lines where you have 2 different owners where they got underground and that coal that's the neighbors that you don't pay royalty, that burns a lot, that smells a lot better than the stuff you have to burn. So there was a lot of, once they got underground, they, in some instances, I should say in some instances, I've heard stories of that, where you look at the sinkholes and you look at the mine map, and you move the mine map over about 300 foot and everything just lines up perfectly. Yes.
I went to school with Kenneth, Glenn, Nelson, Lois,
Yep.
and their dad, Clarence Nelson, has a certificate from the state as a human scoop shovel.
Okay.
He put in 6 more loads than anybody. And so one time I was talking to him, because he likes to drink down at the bar, how do you do that? This is simple. Bend over and shovel, but don't ever get up.
There you go.
And then at the end of the day, you stand up, walk out, and the rest of them are just grabbing for the wall. You know, they go like this, just bend over. But boy, he had armor, and you didn't want to break arms with him.
Oh, I'm sure not. Those were pretty tough men that went down in those mines.
It was just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But he has a certificate, one of the kids from the state, that no one ever built as many cars.
Built as many cars as he did. Yep.
It just,
Like you say, those are some pretty tough men.
yeah. I assume they got paid for more cars.
I don't remember. You know this, what they got paid per car when they came out of the mine? I don't know.
Some of the information is in Mary Rowley's book about how much they were paid for the coal at that
Oh,
time.
there you go. Does it say?
Some of them do. There's more of them in there. Shows how much mine.
There you go. Well, here, I can't. I got my wrong glasses on. I can't get my reading glasses. Sorry. So, but yeah, I don't know how much they were paid per car.
14,380 pounds of coal went for $24.45.
Okay.
What year was that? November 16th of 50. I'm not sure. November 16th. I know that, but I don't know what year. Just above it is a school, Haynes School from 1953.
Anyway, thank you very much. You guys have a very good day.
This is you.
Minor?
I think it's.
Thank you, Mike. We learned so much. I'm going to ask you, though, please, if you have questions, I know you will for Duane also, raise your hand or something. I'll bring over a mic so that others can hear what you're asking. It's a little bit hard because this isn't actually an auditorium. We're just trying to make it up. So we need to adapt however is needed. So thanks again. We learned a lot about your work, Mike, and we look forward to learning even more. Our second speaker is another, I couldn't say he's a Hettinger guy, but he's not, but he's a Haynes guy, and Haynes can claim him, and they do, and they were always very proud of him. So many of you would have known his mom, Gladys Wamre, who was well known throughout our country, area. When you get a chance, go out to the restored schoolhouse, and you'll see the new teacherage. And yes, it's older than we have restored it to, but we restored it to the 1930s when Gladys Wamre taught there. And you'll see a very tiny picture in black and white of her and some other people on a little shelf. So Duane comes to us also with a whole lifetime of experience in land surveying. He's a retired surveyor from Cattermissy and Jackson and Dickinson, and I'm guessing when you left, they just never were the same again. So he will talk with us, share with us information about the Arrowhead coal mine. Please welcome Duane Wamre.
Thank you. I see Jan out there, it's my classmate. Hi, Jan. Yeah, sure. Anyhow, I was asked by Bonnie and her group to talk about the Arrowhead coal mine, and Mike, he has an advantage on myself. He works, this is his job,
this is not my job, this is just I learned a lot by doing what I'm doing right now for you, and hopefully you'll learn something, and I do it something that you can take home. Anyhow, Christy put together this PowerPoint for me, and I'm going to miss a few things because I have too many things on here to talk about. I really want to talk about the mine itself. I know that there was a time that Arrowhead Mine was used and Haynes were the same thing, but the date that it came, and that was not easy to figure out, it was 1938. The Rupp coal mine decided that they wanted to add another heading to their letterhead, so they used the word Arrowhead Coal Mine, and it stuck. It stuck for almost 40 years. But anyhow, here we go. I said I was a surveyor for close to 40 years, and I did work in this area that the mine was, where the coal came from. I did work in that during the reclamation, not during the actual mining, but the reclamation. And here's some stuff that just, peat moss was where the coal came from 50, 60 million years ago, and pressure and bearing under earth created the coal. And the whole area around here was considered the lignite region of Dakota and eastern Montana. I'm sure most of you people remember the Lewis and Clark plates. Coal was talked about in the ledgers by Custer when he came through in 1874 on the way to Black Hills. Here's a picture of the map of the western half of North Dakota, and there is no Adams County. At that time, we were part of, at the turn of the century, we were part of Hettinger County. That I guess I knew, but I had forgotten. There was the first person that came up here from Wisconsin. I think he had a little knowing that the railroad was coming, even though he picked a spot where he was within pretty near throwing distance from the railroad, but in 1899. And he was, his name was Monroe, and they tried to use his last name, Monroe, for the county, for the township, the 6x6, 36 section name, but they found out that there was another Monroe County way up by east of Minot, so they had to go back and change it. And so they ended up with his first name legally, I suppose, was Clermont, and that's where it came from. And he was basically the first person that settled a homestead in Clermont Township. This is a snapshot of my granddad's 1917 atlas, and that was a masterpiece of work that they put together. Some people from Chicago, a corporation, put together these first ownership maps. That was a heck of a feat back before all the cameras and all the gadgetry that we can use now for our electronics of producing things. This was a lot of handwork, a lot of handwork. But this shows the, this, at that time in 1917, it shows the, I'm going to show the Haynes Platte area along the railroad tracks, and then it also shows going north, there's the railroad spur that went up to the Haynes Cooperative Mine. And I talk about this for a reason. I'll get to it later. but it passed through the west part of section 16, which was the state school land. And this is a picture of Monroe and his partner. They had one of the first mines. I don't know if it was the first, but one of the first. And I look at it, I see 5 wagons. I see 3 of them full of coal. I see 2 waiting in line to get filled. And this was up in the section 16 again. Exactly where it was, I don't know, but I have a vicinity where it happened. He only had that mine for 5 years before he lost his lease to the state of North Dakota. Again, this is the Haynes coal mine area for mines that were there. This I threw in this morning. I've had this for, I don't know, when I was a young kid, I found this in my granddad's hope chest, or whatever you want to call it, a chest. But it talks about the town of Gadsden. Well, Gadsden turned out to be Haynes, and he had to walk. He walked from his place, which is 2 miles east of now Haynes. He walked to Hettinger to get this letter, and it's a letter from his sister, and it's dated March 24, 1908. And he was a 21-year-old man that came out from Minnesota to strike it on his own. And but I don't think there's many people that have Gadsden letters, and so that's the reason I shared this. This is some stuff from our school paper. This is in '59. That's the year I graduated from Haynes. And some more from the Haynes paper. This here, now we're getting into where the actual coal was located. On the left slide, you'll see, or map, actually it's aerial photo, my bad. It's a 1 square mile minus the jog on the top, which is the 30 acres that the Adams County landfill is located at. That should give people an idea where, if you've been to the landfill, you know where the area is at. It's 2 miles east of the junction of 8 and 12. And you can see the, not sure why I have another one where that doesn't show the jog in it, but a little more area from, you can see over from Haynes location. The other one didn't show Haynes on it, but this one does. And the right one has a little square, and that's 1 acre that the Clermont Township acquired from the state of North Dakota to put up a township hall in 1907. And I thought that was kind of neat. As a kid, I used to see this white building, and I always thought it was a schoolhouse. I had no idea what it was, but now it finally, after almost 60-some years, I finally figured out what it was. And it was their meeting hall that the local dignitaries that ran the township, and they had a lot of them. They even had their own constable. They had their own. I mean, it was very elaborate because of the amount of people that were in this small 6-by-6 square mile piece of property. And this is another one that kind of shows the hills on the right-hand side. This is 640 acres, and it goes clear up quite a ways. If I can get my stuff together, I'll show this a little more elaborate in a little bit later. But the ridge of hills there, it goes all the way. It doesn't quite get to. It gets a lot of the coal from that area was mined out of that particular spot. And this again is the railroad track that was built in 1915 to the Haynes Cooperative Mine, tied into the mainline track. And but that was disbanded sometime probably in the late 30s, and the track was removed, and part of that, the south, the north is the top, but the southern part out of Haynes, that was used went from a railroad bed to a haul road, and to the tipple, which was located east of Haynes, about a quarter mile. This is a plat of 5 years of collection from surveyors putting together a yearly tabs of what the coal was removed from the underground. This plat is in room 3 by the, there's a car in there, there's a railroad car, and it's right on the wall, and it's permanent, it's not being moved. That's the reason I don't have it shown here on one of these boards. But it just dates back to the beginning of Arrowhead coal mine. And Rupp, he was the owner, and he got this name started, and it stuck till the end of Virgil Smith's closing in 1973. This is a copy of what's on the wall. Christie had to come in at night to take that picture on the left because it reflected so bad from the, you walk in there now, it's so shiny that you cannot look at it hardly because it just, so she took this at night and it was slightly offset to get so you could see the actual lines. And on the right-hand side is the part on the bottom that I couldn't quite get, but there was a tipple, there was a railroad track there, and I'll probably show that. In fact, I will right now. I'm going to walk over and show you where that railroad track stopped and where the haul road would have taken over. Right down in here is where this is where the tipple was. There was a scale, there was commissary, and there was even places for some of them to stay. But all this here, from here to here, is approximately half a mile. This from here to here is a half mile, just to get some scale. This is another one that they took of the area when it was, before they reclaimed it, and this is a mile from here to here. Highway 12 right here, cutting across the very corner of it. This here road here, the section line road goes to the Lemon Lake, North Lemon Lake, and there's some 65-foot cuts in that hillside. The range of hills just goes right through here, and this is the section line right here. It's just a little bit about I took an average of the price of coal for that particular era. The Rupp coal mine from 35 to 41 was about $1.37, and they mined 113,000 ton in 6 years. And then he sold it to Dakota Collieries in 41 to 54, which is another 13 years. They did 612,000 tons. And then Virgil Smith took over in 54 to the closing in 73, and he did about 306,000 ton. But I show this slide here because of what happened with the equipment. In 38, they had 60 employees, and they put out about 18,000 ton. The price again was $1.50. But when Dakota Collieries took over, Rupp still owned it, but he must have kept the lease. They had to lease it from him. But they put out almost 3 times as much tonnage per year. These are annual, and with half the people. But in Arrowhead Mine in 62 to 64, this was a year again of that they put out 42,000 ton with 6 employees. So that's 10% of the amount of people that did. hydraulics and rubber tires and all that horsepower was a big improvement for the coal mine. These are some freight rates that I found. It's kind of neat. The first one goes up until 1903. It was started in 1903 and then it was revised in 1915. I think the 15 was made more for just so they could get the not so much guessing. But 400 miles, you would almost double the price of your coal. Went from $1.50 to $3 at site if you went about 400 miles. And here's a picture of the Haynes Railroad plat that was made for the railroad that went through Haynes. And the Rupp coal mine was given credit for that. And I'm sure Ed Rupp wasn't very involved in this coal mine from the beginning. And I did not find a lot about him other than he had his Rupp coal mine, and he probably built the tipple at Haynes. I could not find any information about the tipple, but it was probably him. And because he's the one that started the name of Arrowhead coal mine. I do not have a picture of it, as I said, and I have no information on when it was tore down. This is the same photo on the right-hand side of those two I just showed. But north is I had to put it on the side, make it fit. This is not a very good photo for showing. This is some of what the territory looked like before reclamation that Mike talked about. It was a pretty ugly spot up there. There was miles of nothing but needed to be reclaimed, and they did. This is another one of subsidence holes that happen anytime, any place if there was underground. This is what it looked like, I would guess, when they were hauling it from the locals, when the locals would go out and pick their own coal. That was probably the easiest for them to load it. Everything was loaded by hand. There was so much handwork back in those days. This here coal here car is sitting in the back, room 3. I believe it was. Anyhow, it has I forgot who brought it. It was somebody from the area brought this, and it's most of the time you find these sitting outside. The wood is all shrunken up and fallen apart, but this one is in very good shape. This is a tipple. I said I could not get a picture of I do not have a picture of the tipple at Haynes. This is just a generic thing showing how all there was a shaker. It was a screen where they could shake different grades of coal from the bigger pieces all the way down to the fines. This is one, I believe, at the Clermont. This is at the State Mine, South Dakota State Mine. This one I just found it and just thought I'd show it. If anybody's interested in learning more about the history of coal mining, this is online. You can just Google history of coal mining in North Dakota. This one goes from 1873 to 1982. And I'm going to try something here. This may work, it may not. Okay, this shows the, from the air, it shows the location of the area. It'll slow down in a little bit, just hang on. I don't have the, lost my features on it. There's North Dakota, South Dakota border, I guess you can see that, and go back to it, it'll spin around, you'll see Hettinger in the background. But that's just where the location of the Haynes was at and where the Arrowhead coal mine was at, and that's pretty much where the landfill is at. We will get a better view of this stuff on the ground when Lauren takes us out to give us a bus tour. You'll see what it looks like now after all that reclamation's been done. It looks a lot different than it did when I was younger. I remember there was just one big ugly mess of piles of dirt and lots of holes. But it does make a difference, and I think that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. I'm only part of there's still more to come, so.
Thank you, Duane. Really interesting to see all the different viewpoints and to see what's happened before.
Yeah, you
and
put it
what's
where you
done
need
by
to.
now and how different it is. So we're really grateful to both of you and all of you who know so much about the
Thank
mining
you.
in this area. So we've learned a lot of heavy scientific stuff, and now you get the fun part. There's always a human interest story, or stories, plural, to life around a coal mine. Yes, it's a business, but it was a life for many, many, many people. Their farms were near, their land was near, it affected them in many different ways. Some good, some funny. So you are going to be pleased, I think, with the human interest stories that Isabel, Deavey, Howe will share with us now. So come on up, Isabel, and check the height of that for you. So
Okay.
say hello or something.
Hello, everyone. There's one thing that Loretta Lynn and I have in common. We are both coal miners' daughters. My father was an Italian immigrant. He came to the United States in 1905. He landed at Ellis Island. How he got to North Dakota, I'm not quite sure. I do know that he met up with a gentleman named Jack Fitzgerald, who ran kind of a construction company, and they worked construction coming out to the Mott area. And my dad worked 40 years underground. In the summers, he worked construction. In the winters, he worked in the mines. And he worked in Dickinson, Havelock, Scranton, Arrowhead, South Dakota State Mine, the Ely Mine, and in South Dakota, there was a Clark Mine north of Lodgepole. And he worked there for a couple of winters, I believe. Anyway, at the South Dakota State Mine, Jack Fitzgerald bought the mine after South Dakota State left the area. And that was in 1936. My mother, he hired as the cook for the miners. My dad was the mine boss. We lived in this house right there, and I was born there in 1937. There was a hotel, the big house to the north. There was a garage. There was a bathhouse for the miners. Across the berm at that time they had taken the railroad spur out because there was a spur. South Dakota had a spur from Haynes to the South Dakota mine, a railroad spur. But at that time they had taken the spur. South Dakota State had dispensed with a lot of equipment and the spur. But across the mine, the area where the railroad, there was about maybe 3-4 homes. And some were bunkhouses, and then I believe the supervisor that was at the South Dakota State Mine lived in the larger home. My mom cooked for all the miners, and there were a lot of people from Hettinger who came and worked the full week, and they stayed in the hotel. And so naturally, these guys maybe needed some clothes washed, so she had a big job on her hand. However, Mr. Fitzgerald hired a lady, her name was Jenny Sloan, and she came to help my mom. And so she lived in one of the houses across the berm, and so did Mr. Fitzgerald. I think they maybe were companions, you might say. And Mrs. Sloan, she had 2 families from Mott that came to live in Haynes. One was the Elmer Sloan family, who was her son, and the other was Eugene Murphy family, who came maybe in the 1942 time, but they lived in the supervisor's house across from where the supervisor's house was. In 1940, the mine was closed because of fire hazard. So my parents moved to the farm. They bought the farm on the corner, which is now the Miller place. But Mr. Fitzgerald and Mrs. Sloan lived there till maybe the early 50s, and then it was sold to Wendy Ullman. And after Mr. Ullman passed, I believe the land was put up for sale, and Mr. Roosh purchased the land. My mom tells about these miners. She baked bread every day because these miners were hungry. And some of the water at the house, we did have running water, but you couldn't drink it. So then they hauled water from the little farm southwest of us that we purchased, that my folks purchased, in 5-gallon creamery buckets. The creamery pails that you all maybe remember. Well, some of you don't, but some of us do. And every day, my older brothers would have to load those 5-gallon cream cans, go down to the neighbors, and I believe it was George Noggle, my mother's brother, that lived on the place at that time. and get water and bring it back so they could have water to drink. And I was a baby, and how she kept me entertained was she would put me in a little wagon in front of the stove, and I could watch, she said, I watched the fire, the flames burn, and I was plumb content. But my sister Vita was 2 years older than I, and my sister Junior was 8 years older than I. And they spent a lot of time with the miners. And if my brother wanted my sister to come out and go with him up to the scale house, he would tell her, I'll take you, but you gotta put a pair of my pants on because it's dirty. And it was. Well, what they were doing up there was they were rolling cigarettes with the miners. My mom was not real pleased about it, and she mentioned it to my dad, and I don't believe my dad ever said anything to the guys, but Vita and Junior, they got paid minimum, maybe a penny for so many cigarettes, but they had a good time. And my sister's nickname was Pete the Tramp, because she always wore my brother's little coveralls with suspenders, and she had little short black hair, and she did look like a tramp most of the time, because most of the time they were quite dirty. After we moved away, Mr. Fitzgerald and Mrs. Sloan lived there, and so did Murphys. And some of you from Haynes would remember the Murphy family and the Sloan family. And I believe Elmer Sloan did work at the mine, but Mr. Murphy did not. But some of the people from Hettinger that did work at the mine that my mom took care of and cooked, and they never forgot her for it, was Claude and Leonard Marion, Julius and Harry Goplin, some names now that have escaped me because my memory isn't as good as it used to be. But she cooked, and Claude and Leonard Marion, when my mother moved when they moved to Hettinger before my dad died, my mom lived just a little ways from the Catholic Church. But in the wintertime, she would walk. Claude and Leonard always made sure that she had a ride to church and a ride home. They took very good care of her. They appreciated what she did. And she also cooked at the Ely Mine, which you're going to see on this tour. In 1926, she was left a widow with 4 children. And so, she was the breadwinner. The baby was 6 weeks old. So her brother-in-law was Jake Ely, and he offered her a job at the Ely Mine to cook for the miners. So she moved her 4 children to the cookhouse at the Ely Mine, and that's where she met my dad in 1928, because he was working at the Ely Mine in the winter, and they were married, and then she also was hired by Mr. Fitzgerald to cook at and Mr. Fitzgerald changed the state mine name to the Clermont Mine. It was fun growing up close to the mine, even though after we moved to the little farm, I was friends with the little Murphy girl, and we would walk back and forth, kitty corner, so we could play with each other. And the mine fires, we did have mine fires, and many times you'd wake up in the middle of the night and you could smell a sulfur smell, and the mine was on fire. And Mr. Fitzgerald was sort of like a grandfather to us, because he was kind of like a father to my dad, who came to America at a very early age by himself, so he really had no family here. But Mr. Fitzgerald was good to all of us. And he was a big Irishman, and he had a terrible temper, and my dad had a temper, and they would get into a tiff, and there were a lot of words that I can't use to tell you, but then they would make up and they were best buds again. And then my dad would go up to pacify Mr. Fitzgerald, and they would sit and play schmear. My mom had many, many stories about the mines, because she spent a lot of time there. But she said it was an experience because she met so many people. And a lot of people never forgot how good she was to them. And then the homes that were there after Mr. Fitzgerald left, before he sold the mine, he sold the hotel to Lemon. And they moved that hotel to Lemon, and they used it as, they used to say, an old people's home. And it burned down shortly after they moved it there. And the house that I was born in was moved into Hettinger by Ray Clark, and that's the home that Pete and Barb Korang live in now, and it's just the house next door to Duane and Cindy Olson to the north, just kitty corner from the school. And there's a little house in a little batch of trees out southeast of the rodeo grounds. And it's just kind of a little shack right now. But that was the supervisor's house that was brought to town here. And some of you probably know it as the Heindyke House. And so some of those homes are still standing. And it's interesting to see how long, they must have been built really, really well, because they've stood a long time. Thank you. I appreciate you listening to me. Any questions?
You know what happened to Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes, he passed away in the early 50s, and I believe he is buried in Mott. I believe both he and Mrs. Sloan are buried in Mott. He did have a farm up by Regent, and he had a nephew. He had family in Pontiac, Illinois, and when he bought the little farm, he had his nephew Leo Fitzgerald come out, and he lived on that farm till I was probably in my teens, and then he went back to Illinois, and Jack sold the place, but the barn that was on the Fitzgerald place, on his farm up by Regent, was moved to the Jake Wolf place south of Hettinger here 4 or 5 miles. And I believe that burnt, or they tore it down, maybe, Susie? Okay. But a lot of those buildings were salvaged from the South Dakota State Mine. And when we lived there, there still was a steam generator that ran the mine, the lights in the house, and some of the machinery like the tipple, whatever that would be called, I don't know. The tipple, there must have been electricity to help unload the coal into the tipple and dump it. And then the lights in the tipple house and in the scale house and in the bunk houses were all run by a steam generator. And I don't know whatever happened to that.
Could you tell me how many miners your mother put for? Was it 3 Mingles a day?
3 meals a day. Sometimes she had 25, sometimes she had 30. Breakfast, dinner, and supper.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And in between that, she made bread.
She did. She made bread every morning. And my brother Lawrence, who was my half-brother, he was the kneader. She would mix the bread dough, and my brother Lawrence would knead it because it was, and she mixed not just one pan, but maybe 2 and 3 pans. And she had big, long bread pans like this. They were that long, and they were about that narrow. And she had those until I was probably married. Thank all of you. What? It's not what it used to be.
Mike and to Duane and to Isabel. We have a little lunch for you here. There's water you can pick up, and there are things that are pre-packaged you can take along with you or not, as you wish. But this is the first half of it, and after you have a little lunch, there will be 2 buses outside. Lauren has gotten us on the second bus, so there should be room for everybody. Those of you who cannot, for whatever reason, get on the bus are welcome to drive behind the bus. And then we'll meet you at the Ely Mine, and there's another special program there and a supper that they have made for you. So we're just getting started, so enjoy. Lone, you want to share your details with us, please?
So we probably have about 20 minutes for you to wander around, get a snack and whatever. And so we'll tentatively we'll set 2 o'clock to load the buses. The white bus, the front seats are taken up by the speakers and myself. Yellow bus, I don't know, unless Mike and Isabel might maybe want to ride on the yellow bus, and we'll have Duane and myself on the other one. If that'll work. Then we'll have somebody that can speak on both buses. So go ahead and help yourself. There's water there. If you grab a bottle of water, take it on the bus with you. And I have another cooler full of water too that'll be on the bus.